Hi, my name is Robin Wong. I'm a photographer based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I have with me the 7ARTISANS 60mm F2.8 Macro lens. I'm not in the city, I'm in a forest trail and I want to do some insect macro photography. Let's do this! Before we start, here are some important disclaimers. I have no affiliation to 7ARTISANS and no connections to any camera manufacturers out there. I bought this lens with my own money. However, to be entirely honest, 7ARTISANS did send me an email. They wanted to send me a macro lens, but there was after I've purchased this lens. No one asked me to do this video, I'm sharing my opinion, and to be frank, this is not a review. I just want to share my experience using this lens, 60mm F2.8 Macro, doing some insect macro photography. The only reason I bought this macro lens is because I was really curious about how a cheap manual macro lens performs. I've used the Olympus 60 F2.8 Macro, which was a fantastic macro lens. I think it is one of the best macro lenses out there. I also have some cheap macro options. I use a macro filter, the Reynolds filter which attached in front of the lens, or even extension tubes, which I've talked about very recently, which I think is a cheap and effective way for macro photography. I'll put a link to the video up here. Please check it out if you have not done so. So I got this 7ARTISANS 60mm F2.8 Macro. I don't need this lens for my macro needs. I'm just curious, and this was going for about $100 new. It is really cheap. If I don't like the lens, I can just sell it off. I'm not losing anything. But at this moment, I want to find out how this lens performs. Well, this is a budget lens. The 7ARTISANS 60mm F2.8 Macro does not feel like a cheap lens. It costs only $100, but the lens is made of full metal construction all over. It feels really reassuring in hand. There are no creaky parts, and I really love the feel on my hands. The lens itself has only two controls, manual focusing ring as well as the aperture ring. The aperture is from f2.8 to f22. I think I'll use mostly from f4 to f8 or even stopping down more to get sufficient depth of field for my insect macro photography. One interesting thing to note about this lens, although it is a cheap lens, but it does have internal focusing, which I really appreciate. As you turn the focusing ring, as you're adjusting your focus, the lens does not extend. I love the design of this lens. It looks sleek, it is minimalist, it is black, it matches most of my camera bodies, no issue, and it is not a light lens. For such a small lens, it weighs about 550 grams. That is quite heavy. I'll suggest using this lens on larger camera bodies with beefier hand grip like an EM1 series cameras from Olympus. I'm pairing this 7ARTISANS 60mm F2.8 with my EM1 Mark III, and we're gonna try to get some insect macro shots. If you're interested to find out about my insect macro shooting technique, I've made a video to talk about that. I share everything about how I handhold the camera, how I set it up, how I use my wireless off-camera flash, how I diffuse the flash, to all the camera settings that I use. I'll put the link to the video up here. Please check it out if you have not done so. As I've mentioned earlier, this is not a full review of this 7ARTISANS 60mm f2.8 macro lens. I'm just sharing my impressions of using this lens and how it performs for my inset macro shooting. I will not go into too deep details about distortion, flare control, chromatic aberration. I'll just look at the results of the inset macro shots that I got. I'll make some comments on them. In terms of sharpness, this lens is capable of resolving some really good details and it's some good contrast. I've no issue getting really sharp images from this lens. Even going to full magnification, I can still get really good results. I'm stopping the lens down to f4, f5.6 to get optimal results. Of course, if you're shooting f2.8, you may not be able to get sufficient depth of field. So I'm okay if this lens is somewhat a little bit soft at f2.8, stopping down to f4, f5.6, the images are looking really good. Perhaps the sharpness, the level of clarity from the images, they are not on the same levels from Olympus 60 f2.8 or even some lenses from Panasonic. These lenses will render much better clarity, much better sharpness. But for a budget lens, I think the sharpness is really good. It is perhaps on par with most kit lenses out there like Panasonic 12-35 or Olympus 14-42 Pancake, and perhaps it's a little bit better. In terms of chromatic aberration, I did see some purple fringing and some green fringing, but they are not very serious and they can be easily corrected. It shouldn't be an issue, and if you stop down to say f6.3 or f8, virtually all the purple fringing or any chromatic aberration, any of these traces will disappear. There is some vignetting if you shoot wider at f2.8 or f4, but like I said, for inset macro photography, vignetting, corner softness is not an issue. I really just want to see what's at the center because I put my subject at the center. I want to resolve as much fine detail as possible. The fact that for something so cheap, I can go so close and go really close and achieve full 100% magnification. And if you translate that to Micro Four Thirds, that's 2:1 magnification, right? Because we have 2 times crop. This is impressive. You get a lot out of this lens. I'm very happy with my results shooting so close to the subjects, and sometimes I even forgot that I'm using a cheap macro lens, and that's a good thing. For a budget macro lens, there really isn't much to complain about. Of course, if I really want to nitpick, I can find some flaws or imperfections in the optical rendering. Yes, it is not as good as the higher grade Olympus 60 f2.8, but if you don't compare side by side, if you don't pixel peep, you don't even know that images are taken from a budget lens, and that's really impressive. I do have one complaint though. The aperture ring being clickless, that can be a little bit inconvenient if I'm shooting through the viewfinder, and when I want to change the aperture, I don't know where it is, so I need to look at the ring again and to find out where the F number is. And the throw of the F number is different from f2.8 to f4 and from f8 to f11. And you know, sometimes it can be just like I can accidentally turn the ring and go to f16 without realizing it, and that can be dangerous. But other than that, there really is not much to complain. Even that isn't really a deal breaker. I think for a budget lens, if you want to explore macro photography, you don't want to break a bank, you don't want to spend too much money, say for the Olympus 60 f2.8, you just want something budget, and yet you can mount on the camera directly without any attachments. I think this is a really good option. That's all I have to share about this cheap 7ARTISANS 60mm f2.8 macro lens. I hope you found my sharing beneficial to you. If you've enjoyed looking at my photographs, please do consider buying me a cup of coffee, or you can contribute directly to my PayPal. Links in the description below on how you can do that. Any small contribution goes a long way. It will definitely help me to continue making more content and publish them right here. Please also give me a thumbs up, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll definitely see you again in the next one. Until then, remember to go out and take more photographs. Bye-bye.